Cheers, guys. Epix 911, welcome to the Thursday, April 27th, 2017 edition of VR News. Like yesterday, a lot of things going on with virtual reality, so we're going to jump right into it. Going to start with Chinese studio Omni Games and their VR game Age of Heroes, which is an MMO, something we haven't seen a lot of at all in virtual reality. Now, their massively lofty claim is they want to be the World of Warcraft for virtual reality. At least that's the translation I think they were going for, because the one that's printed reads, they are going to be better than World of Warcraft. And like I said, that is just way too lofty. I'd like to think that got lost in translation, so that's the angle that I'm going with. You take one look at the graphics, and they appear more primitive even than the 2004 World of Warcraft launch graphics. Now, graphics aren't the end-all of a game. For me, gameplay is the most important. You know, I played MUDs, Ultima Online, EverQuest, and then World of Warcraft, a lot of MMOs. And, you know, the graphics for a lot of those games don't necessarily age well. EverQuest basically looks like pea soup thrown on a monitor. It's horrible looking. And World of Warcraft, I guess, saved by that cartoony look, it helps it age a bit more gracefully because of the way those characters are drawn, you know, more circular, cartoon-like. It can hide less polygons. But Age of Heroes, there's not a lot to see in the video. There's a dungeon environment. You don't really see above ground or varied interior environments. It's basically stone dungeon walls with some cool characters. Now, if they can get the gameplay balanced and tight and it's not too buggy, you know what? Even if it just takes place in a big dungeon world, it could be fun. But I'm going to definitely reserve judgment on this until I see more. They're hoping to launch for the Rift and the Vive with a PlayStation version coming after, and the ability to interact with players regardless of whatever platform they happen to be playing on. So again, like I said, very lofty goals. Hopefully they're able to make that happen. So we'll probably be looking at that game again. That's Age of Heroes from Omni Games. Now this next one, more for kind of the kidlets. This is Shaun the Sheep getting its own VR experience. Now my daughter's grown, so I haven't really been in the loop of kid-friendly stuff, let alone kid-friendly VR stuff. But that is what this, you know, says it is. Same people behind Wallace and Gromit, that animation studio, has created this. It is a Google Cardboard app. So if you've got a Google Cardboard compatible device, that's going to play this. On their website, they actually offer a Shaun the Sheep HMD. So it's got that design and artwork all over it. It's a Google Cardboard style device. You can get that off their website. So if you've got kids, you're looking for something friendly, and Shaun the Sheep is something they're interested in, maybe take a look at this. Cool way to introduce kids, I think, to virtual reality. Next story, Google launching a virtual reality artwork gallery on the web, and this is specifically for Tiltbrush artwork. Not a lot of details in the article, but it's basically a sketches section, so you can see a lot of Tiltbrush work. I imagine there's plugins to allow you to view that with your HMD, but I wasn't able to determine that from the article. I'll take another look and report on that in a future story if that is the case. But in the meantime, you can check out the link. Lots to talk about tonight, so we're going to move on, but check out the link for that in the description below. Now, this next one, possibly a leak or a faux pas by Microsoft. I just checked. It seems to be offline, but earlier when I was researching the story, it was online. And what I'm talking about is a listing and a release date for HTC Vive's Deluxe audio strap. Now, we've talked about the $99 US price tag before. What we didn't know was a release date. The date that they had specified on this website was June 5th. Very specific. And if it is offline now, possibly indicating that that was in fact an accurate date. So it'll be interesting as we get closer to June if that was the case. Still not a device, guys, I'm sure I'm going to get. I'm really happy with the headphones that I have on my HTC Vive. They work for me. They work great. So probably not going to go with that. But there are some other peripherals for HTC Vive we're going to talk about tonight that are very tempting. All right, next news piece. A little shocking, this one. Oculus is not going to have a booth at this year's E3. But it kind of makes sense, and I'll get to that in a second. So I'm going to put a graphic up here. You're going to see the size of the booth relative to other booths at E3 previous years. So you've got Oculus 2014, 2015, and 2016. You can see the booth growing every year, and now nothing. Well, a lot of that was building up to launch, and of course last year's just post-launch. So there was still a lot of things to show to get people excited, games. We know that Oculus's focus seems to be more on the software side, not third-party peripherals. Other than, of course, their own touch controllers, there's not a lot out there like with the Vive, right? And speaking of that, there's a lot of Vive stuff we're going to cover tonight, but not so much for the Rift. Not a bad thing, just the reality, right? Their focus seems to be elsewhere. So take that into account. And it's not surprising. What are they going to talk about? They don't have any hardware. They mentioned there's no plans for any additional hardware. Other companies are going to feature their virtual reality Rift compatible games. So not a real reason for them to be there. They're probably holding off for their own Oculus Connect event a few months later. That's my guess. Next story, hands-on with an updated version of Acer's Windows 10 compatible HMD. So this was tested by Upload VR staff again and compared to the previous one. So this time they got more floor space to test. 4 feet in each direction. Tester was able to jump, move quickly. Tracking, which is inside-out tracking, which hasn't really been done commercially yet for any unit, was working very well, he said. Not able to break it, except when he went down to the ground, then got up quickly. Those first few inches getting up off the ground, the frame rate got a little janky, and there was a little bit of latency there. That was only for a split second, maybe hundreds of milliseconds. As soon as he got up, tracking reestablished itself. So that is good. Also some changes with the lens design. So that circular pattern there still doesn't look or sound like a full Fresnel design like the Vive, but more so maybe than the Rift, which doesn't have that pattern, the telltale sign of the Fresnel design. It's itself, the Rift, only partial Fresnel. So imagine that's the case for Acer as well, because there were noticeable God rays when looking at white floating letters that were, superimposed on top of black background. Same thing that happens with the Rift. The UI also not quite as friendly as what Vive and Rift offer. It's more operating system-like, which makes sense. That operating system software written by Microsoft, that's their bag. They know that better. So probably not as user-friendly as the Rift and Vive, but still at the end of the day, going to be functional. It was also nice and light, and the black head strap, very comfortable, able to make it fit really snug to the head. And of course, a big win with that flip-up visor. Ouch. So very cool. Next, and that was all at the Acer event today. So is this next story, Starbreeze, who attended that, unveiling some additions to their Star VR device and some software that they have available. So first, Bo Anderson took to the stage. He talked about some of the upgrades like resolution to the device. And then Brooks Brown took the stage. He's the global director of VR for Starbreeze Studios. He unveiled a handful of gaming experiences. No videos, unfortunately, so there wasn't a lot to see or tell. Hopefully at E3, we find out a little bit more. Now this next story, talking about dungeon crawls, roguelikes, absolutely among my favorite. I would love to see a true roguelike, like the originals, Net, Hack, Angband, Ancient Domains of Mystery, Dungeon Crawl, to see those, hell, even with real time, which I know is a big no-no with roguelikes, but I think that would work in VR. Just simple dungeon, lots of items, lots of armor, lots of spells, monsters, good artificial intelligence. You could make a killer, simple looking, but fun as hell roguelike. Well, this article has to do not with a roguelike, but a dungeon crawler called Raiders of Erda. And where it really shines for dungeon crawler fans, especially dungeon crawler VR fans, according to David Jagno from Upload VR, who tested it, is the combat. When I did a quick look on Vanishing Realms, one of the things I talked about was how awesome combat has the potential to be in VR. And the way I described it is, I said, with traditional gaming, 3D, 2D, there are generally set frames of animation, and the AI is programmed to counter those set frames. If it's a 2D sprite-based games, sword attacks, for example, may be a thrust, an overhead chop, a two-handed swing, and then that's it. The AI programmed to deal with those. In VR, you can be as dynamic as the person, the human wielding the sword. You could start out with an arc and then Zorro swing back. You know what I mean? It can be super dynamic and make for combat that is every bit as realistic as if you were to do that fight in real life. Make it feel so much more than just a game. David says this game is starting to kind of go in that direction more than we've ever seen from non-VR games. He was on his toes, kind of moving around an enemy, looking for opportunities to strike, defend. In short, he said the combat was fantastic. So yeah, again, I maintain a roguelike, but in real time would be amazing. So that's Raiders of Erda. You can check out the link in the description below. All right, Vive. Not to be outdone by Facebook with their Spaces releasing their own social VR application called WeChat. Or rather, it doesn't really have a name, it's WeChat integrated. WeChat itself, based on a Chinese program super popular there called Weijia, I believe is the pronunciation, Weijia, or Weijia. Let's go with that, Weijia. So a lot of the functionality, very similar to Spaces, according to those who've seen it. So I'm sure as we see that develop, we're going to find out a bit more. Again, probably not something I'm going to be too interested in. I tend to be more into other experiences and games than the social side, but who knows? I'm never going to say never. Maybe I'll try it. Next up, we talked about peripherals, third-party add-ons for the Vive. The one a lot of us are waiting for, of course, TPCast. Well, TPCast announced a business edition that can handle 6 wireless HMDs at once. Very, very cool. We know the commercial one is designed for 1 HMD to deliver basically close to the same experience you would get with a wired device. Unlike some of the other wireless ones we've seen out there, TPCast has so far been able to deliver that in tests. Now, it remains to be seen, the commercially launched unit, if it's going to be able to do that. But like I said, so far, they definitely pass muster. So TPCast CEO Michael Liu, he basically explained to Upload VR that the business edition is going to come with a transmitter and a receiver for each of the 6 headsets that the system can run. There's no price yet, but apparently the release date is going to be sometime in the 3rd quarter. And in testing it, they noticed that the adaptive software that this uses does appear to actually do that. They played a version of VR Pong, and at first there were some latency issues with frame rate, but by about the 30-second mark, that stabilized. And it stayed that way for the remainder of their time playing the game. So that's a good sign. Hopefully that's the case with games across the spectrum. When I'm talking about devices that I do want to get, this definitely one of them, even if the audio strap isn't. TPCast, hell yeah, definitely one I want to get. Next up, I wasn't kidding when I'm talking about third-party stuff for the HTC Vive. This time, Chinese startup known as 7invention, not making that up, that's the actual name, obviously a play on invention. Anyways, it's called A-Glass, and very cool as it tracks your pupil. So this is an eye tracking add-on for the Vive, which conveniently, according to them, snaps into place inside your HMD just over top the lenses. There's 2 videos in the link. The first one shows kind of the calibration. He's moving his pupils and you can see red LEDs around the circular capture point. So it's see-through with kind of a ring that goes around. You can see the LEDs light up whatever area the pupil happens to be kind of looking in, right? What's so powerful about this is what you see in the second video, foveated rendering, which we've talked about. One game that makes heavy use of that is Robinson the Journey for PlayStation VR, except it does it center screen, and it's based on which direction your head happens to be in. If you're stationary and you just move your eyes around the scene, the foveated rendering stays center. So if you're looking at the edge, it's blurry. There's pixels omitted. You have to move your head up physically to see that area, to make it go to the center of your view. That's where this foveated rendering comes in, makes it so powerful is now you can do that with your eyes. Stationary, you dart your eyes to the left, the foveated rendering will follow you. According to them, 45 boosted up to 90 frames per second using this foveated rendering. That's going to be huge, and probably another peripheral I can say with certainty I'm going to get. $220 US is the speculated cost for this. It's going to go on sale in China this month, so we're probably going to get some more tests, and the rest of the world in the third quarter. So kind of those fall months is when we can expect that. Last story, guys, Adobe showing a method to create volumetric VR video from flat 360-degree captures. Now, the software uses an algorithm, and it's pretty good at doing kind of minimal estimations into a direction. The further it goes, the less accurate it is. It's pretty technical how it does this, but it does aim to bring 6 degrees of freedom to the standard monoscopic 360-degree video. So you're going to be able to look left, right, up, down, but also move your head naturally side to side and have the scene adapt to that. So be neat to see that in action. I'm going to reserve final judgment until I'm able to actually see that. But exciting stuff. Lots going on, guys, in VR. This is just an awesome time. Can't wait. 2017 is shaping up pretty nicely. Lots of games coming out, more in the future, and some pretty damn cool peripherals. All right, guys, that's it for Thursday's news. Tomorrow, Game and Friday. Cheers, guys.